Hello and welcome to another session of Mordred's Community Political Discussion. This week we're joined by special guest, Marisi, our Florence player. Marisi, thank you for joining us.
Yes, hello.
So, last week, quite a few player wars compared to our previous sessions, and Florence was right in the thick of a number of them. How'd the session go for you overall?
Well, in terms of gains and losses, I didn't really lose all that much. I didn't gain anything, but it was quite a tedious session psychologically.
Looking at Florence right now, manpower is still pretty healthy. Technology, you're right there on the bleeding edge, of course. Ideas, working through economic. Ducats don't have a very large bank. Was it a costly war for you?
Well, not costly as in that I lost a lot of income, but I did spend a lot, mostly on diplomatic expenses, just keeping other players in the war and financially well.
And you fought two primary wars. There was Hanover, obviously went after Andalusia right off the bat to reclaim some of those cores for its vassal Castile. Ethiopia was a little bit involved, and then you attempted to enforce peace. What made you
Yes.
decide to try to use that mechanic?
Um, Hold on. I can't actually remember why exactly I went for false peace. I think it actually had to do with the alliance rules, but I'm not completely sure why I made that decision. But I did just want to get involved because to keep a sort of balance of power in Iberia, because Hanover, with its big power base in Germany and its alliances with Prussia and previously Bavaria, is a lot stronger than Andalusia from my point of view. And also, I have a trade deal with Andalusia where they give me their trade power, and I pay them for it.
Oh, very interesting. Didn't know about that trade deal.
Yeah.
Makes a lot more sense now. You are making quite a bit from trade, obviously, 90 ducats currently right now in the Genoa node. Now, let's
Yes.
shift to the Great Britain War. That was an aggressive war by Great Britain, am I correct?
Yes, they declared.
And do you think he saw an opportunity when you entered the war defending Andalusia, or do you think that war was inevitable?
From what I heard from him, inevitable because he said that he thought we were going to attack him, and in all honesty, we were actually talking about it like a week or two already. It's just that we didn't really know how we could put it off since we didn't really feel like we had the numbers on our side, especially when Bavaria made a deal with Britain rather than come to blows with him.
And it seemed like that war dragged on for a very long time. Was there a conscious decision made not to try to take British Guyana or their Ivory Coast holdings during that war?
Um, well, a conscious decision, yes, sort of. Like, initially, I didn't even notice, to be honest. But eventually, I thought to myself, since their troops are in the New World, in South America, fighting over Trinidad, which was the war goal, I thought that I should send my troops down to Guinea just to occupy it. However, with British naval dominance, I wasn't sure I could cross the strait back again, so I decided against it.
Yep. Didn't want to leave your homeland exposed.
Yeah, yeah.
Other player wars this session included Ethiopia and Milan going back and forth over some African holdings. Milan took a big chunk out of the Congo, and then Ethiopia took a chance while Milan was occupied in Europe to take their land back. Do you see further European aggression in the Congo region in this week's coming session?
I mean, I'd probably say so, yeah. Although, if anything, I think Ethiopia probably has the upper hand in the area.
Ethiopia looking quite strong, great power number four, quite a bit of development, manpower pool healthy, has not been tied up in many wars, right around their force limit, looking pretty strong, and decent allies with the Knights in Andalusia. They'd be a force to be reckoned with if called upon.
I mean, certainly, yeah. It's just with the if called upon, it's just that they're a bit out of the way to help Andalusia, which I think we saw in the Hanover War. Not that they didn't try to help, but it's just kind of hard for them to actually get there and contribute in a massive amount.
Another interesting war that we saw, Georgia looking to expand towards the east. All of those countries, Bukhara, Chagatai, etc., were Shun tributaries. So Shun got involved, Sweden got involved. It was a relatively long war, but I believe Georgia won at the end. Cost them quite a bit. Crimea split out at one point, but they're back again. Do you see Sweden and Georgia continuing their push into Asia in the coming weeks?
Um, I don't think next week. Maybe the coming weeks after, but next week I think Sweden is not really going to be in a big position to help. Sweden did just take a big blow with the war against Britain, which is also still going on. Also, I don't really see how much Sweden stands to gain from this. I mean, it's nice for them to keep Georgia intact, to keep Shun out, but at this point, I don't really think that's much of a big threat.
Yep, makes sense. The rest of Asia, relatively quiet the past few sessions. We have a Japan player now. We have a Malacca, obviously that guy in India, and Fizz Biscuits McGuffin over in Persia. Do you see any European Asian conflicts brewing or any inter-Asian conflicts in the coming weeks?
European Asian conflicts, I don't. Well, it may be between the Brits and Malacca, but that is if the Brits actually do feel like making more enemies, since right now, well, they already have a fair amount of enemies. But I'd say that before last session, East Asia was pretty open and pretty much an untouched area. I was actually colonizing the Kuril Islands and was actually going to expand into Japan before it got a player assigned. I think now that nobody will really try to contest. I don't think any Europeans will try to contest the Asians over there right now, since by far most Europeans have enough enemies in Europe or the New World. However, between the Asians, I mean, I'd say probably there's going to be conflict, but I think I'll probably at least take a session or two.
Yeah, still quite a bit of AI consolidation in the area. I could see some Shun Japanese mix-ups, or maybe Malacca and Japan, as Japan's moved aggressively into the Philippines.
Yeah, I do reckon that Japan and Malacca are going to be at odds with each other. However, I think that's probably still going to take a session or maybe two for that to happen, since Japan is still consolidating. I mean, they've only played as Japan for one session so far.
And as we rotate back to the New World, quite a few players in this region. We now have Peru, the former Papal States. We have the Netherlands, Texas, our former Norway, and Canada, our former Ireland player. Quite a bit of conflict going on in this area. Looks like Canada, after taking out the 13 colonies, has now aligned themselves with Great Britain. Do you expect Texas to make moves aggressively towards Canada to prevent them from growing stronger?
I think that Texas would like to do so, but I'm not sure if they're really in a position to do so. Because, as you said, I think the Brits will help them, and Texas cannot beat Canada and the Brits on their own.
Mm-hmm. And then,
Also,
yeah.
I think that the Texas player might not be here next session.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, last week he said that he wouldn't be here for 2 weeks, and last session, was just the first week then.
Yep. Interesting. Texas has a large number of gold mines. They have not spent a lot of points deving them up, so their gold income is actually quite low for what you would expect. It'll be interesting to see if they spend some time working towards that. Another thing I noticed about Texas, their advisors, a +1, +3, +1, they're spending over 38 ducats a month on colonies. I don't think that's the best use for them right now. They should be consolidating the territory they have, finishing off the Mayans or the southern Mexican natives, and then deving up. What are your thoughts on expansion versus consolidation from a Texas perspective?
I actually had no clue they were spending that much on the colonial maintenance, but yeah, that seems rather inadvisable. Like, sure, the colonial expansion is going to be super important for him, but where he's colonizing right now in the California area, I think that is pretty consolidated for him.
And it's
Number
extremely
one, I
low
don't.
development land.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it's area for potential, but like definitely not worth 38 ducats a month of colonial maintenance.
And shifting down into South America, Peru, Netherlands, currently at war, relatively even right now. Peru, maybe a little more manpower. Netherlands, maybe a slightly better economy. What do you expect to see out of this region?
I think. Well, I mean, like, I don't think real big gains are going to be made over there anytime soon because it seems like it will be pretty slow. However, I honestly do think that the Netherlands is in a lot of trouble. I don't see a way how they will win this war without some real big outside interference, and Sweden is not in any position to help them.
Definitely not. Now, let's take a minute, rotate back to Europe. Milan made a move on France. Hanover, Prussia, Byzantium decided to use that as an opportunity to move on Milan. Backfired a little bit towards the end of the session there, with France being stab hit out of the war, Hanover and Prussia sneaking out with a white peace, leaving Byzantium hung out to dry. How hard do you think Milan's going to push this advantage?
Uh, well, initially I would have thought that they would push it very hard, but now that I'm actually looking at it, seems to me that if anything, they'll probably try to peace out as soon as possible. In fact, well, I mean, it's hard to say, but maybe it's been Byzantium that's been holding out on a peace offer. Because if you look at it, it does really seem like they're on the verge of bankruptcy. Although I'm not completely sure about it. Like I might be wrong about this mechanic, but I thought that if your interest per month is higher than your income, that you are forced to declare bankruptcy, even if Milan does have a lot in the bank right now.
You are not forced to declare the bankruptcy. You can remain solvent until you're forced to take that extra loan
Oh, okay. I
or you
mean,
run out of money.
in that case, I reckon Milan is probably gonna see this war through
It's going to be
because I mean
interesting.
they do have the advantage.
They have quite a bit of manpower. They do have a long runway, but as you mentioned, the interest is higher than their total income. So they'll have to press hard, win the war, probably truce break to take another advantage, and then declare bankruptcy and hope they can hold out the 5 years.
Yeah, because this debt they have racked up, that's gonna be really hard to get rid of without bankruptcy.
One question I have for you about last session, Naples obviously moved into Japan. Couple of centers of trade were up for grabs in the Genoa trade node. Byzantium moved on them. How do you feel about that as Florence?
I'm not happy about that at all. Actually, I was gonna jump on them myself, but I got into that war with well, you and Andalusia, and yeah, Byzantium took that opportunity to take them for himself. But I am really not happy about that. Byzantium has offered me money as compensation in his own words, but well, the land itself is to me of much greater value.
Yep. And let's take a moment and shift to Florence and your journey from the beginning of the season to where you are now. Obviously, you started in Italy. It was a little more crowded then. We had a papal state. We had Naples. We had Milan. We had Savoy. How were you able to survive those first few sessions with so many players around you?
Um, well, I mean, honestly, I think it's just that nobody was really in a position to kill me. Not because I was strong, but just because they had other issues to deal with, especially Milan. I initially tried to beat Milan. I mean, he did attack me over Modena, but considering outside support, I reckon that I could win the war together with Savoy and Naples. But well, Jamie is a rather tough opponent, and we coordinated pretty badly. So that did not go well. And after that, I decided to actually just try to stick with Milan. Milan and I came to an understanding, and yeah, we have been, I'd say, on decent terms ever since. So yeah, as far for that, I mean, Savoy got beaten in that war. The Papal States, I mean, they kind of overextended, and I mean, I'd say made a good decision with just leaving for Peru, and that only really left Naples, who, well, after a couple of sessions, I think, of not being here, nation didn't do so well, and they switched as well. So honestly, I'd say, I mean, the only Italian player that's really been pushed out of the game is Savoy. The rest, yeah, kind of just overextended and left.
And one of the interesting moves early in the game that you made as Florence was a no CB war against Portugal to take Lisboa.
Yes.
Obviously, Iberia didn't have any players at the time. Were you thinking if I get pushed out of Italy, I can become Spain or something along those lines?
It was purely a plan B. For indeed, if I was, because I wasn't really expecting to survive in Italy, but it was a plan B for if I was pushed out of Italy, I could stay alive there until I could colonize and become a colonial nation.
Okay. And over the course of the game, you've made some moves. You were able to expand into France. You've got most of the traditional Portuguese land. How has this worked out compared to what you thought at the start of the game?
Uh, it's worked out better than, well, I mean, at the start of the game, I was hoping to, in case Milan died, hoping to be able to consolidate Italy. However, that would have been, well, a long shot. Uh, but after the war with Savoy, my expectations well rather dropped. Well, war with Savoy, I mean the war together with Savoy against Milan. And I'd say since then it's actually gone a lot better than I thought it would. I honestly didn't think I'd still be alive in Europe at this point.
Any tricks up your sleeve for the last few sessions we've got here?
Not really actually. just well, just honestly keep in the background and just watch how the geopolitics in Europe develop from this point on.
Well, appreciate you taking the time for speaking with us this week, and best of luck to you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.